Town Council special meeting, 6:05 PM, Thursday, April 8th, 2021. With that, Ms. Milton, roll call, please.
Mr. Orris,
Here.
Mr. Slocum, Mr. Burraway,
Present.
Mr. Jinks, Ms. Nichols, Mr. Talbot,
Here.
Ms. Pavano,
Here.
Mr. Veliver. David? Okay, he's here, right? Mr. Walsh?
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Milton. Yes, Mr. Veliver is here. We just couldn't hear him.
Okay.
Please rise for the Pledge of
Sorry, yep, here.
Allegiance. I pledge
Didn't hit this.
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah. Sorry about that, Marilyn. Yes, I am here. I missed the space bar to unmute myself.
Okay.
Okay, the first item on our agenda this evening is presentation and public comment regarding the Town Council proposed fiscal year 2021-2022 operating budget. It's my understanding we're going to have a brief presentation from our Town Manager, Sean Kimball. But before that, I'd like to turn it over to our Budget Chair, Mr. David Bowery.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Orris. Appreciate that. Council members, staff members of the public, we appreciate your participation. It's always great to hear comments, and we hope we will, from the public so that we as the elected officials know what policies you folks would like us to enact and how we can put all the different desires together. This is our 7th workshop regarding the fiscal year 21-22 budget. And we have reviewed each of the departments through tonight, with recreation and pool left to be done following this public information session. We have reviewed the expenditures for each of the departments within the town and the Board of Ed. We have reviewed the revenue expectations. We are expecting to get updates on those as the process moves along. There have been some recent potential changes to the process. Like last year, the governor has issued an executive order that will allow for an extension that the legislative body may decide to grant itself, so that we don't have to have an April 30 deadline, which we had been working towards this year. The additional time could give us additional time to know what a revenue picture would be a little more clearly, because it is changing significantly. There is potential additional revenues over and above what the town manager has proposed in his budget. He left quite a few policy decisions for the elected officials to make, not only with regard to policies for expenditures, but with regard to what we would feel is a comfort level with revenues. And some of those are dependent on the legislature, and the state legislature has an early June adjournment date. So they generally will know by the end of May what their budget is going to be. So we would have a clearer picture of what our revenues might be. The goal, as always, is to try to see what we can do about keeping the mill rate as reasonable and as low as it needs to be in order to provide the level of services that our residents have come to expect. We hope to find continued ways to be more efficient, continued ways to combine areas if needed, and if found to be efficient and worthwhile to do. There may be items that we don't need to be doing anymore. There may be items that we want to enhance. But those are all our purposes, the 7 workshops we've had so far to review the expenditures and meeting with all the department heads and with the town manager and his leadership team. And now we are ready to hear more from the public and review later after that recreation. And then later in the month, we will probably reconvene together as a budget committee if the council grants the extension that I'm seeking of our deadline, so that we can look at a clearer picture of revenues. And even department revenues change. It's been 2 months since this budget was really put together, 3 months with the Board of Ed. So there are quite a few changes that hopefully work in the positive direction and to help mitigate some of the increase that might need to be had. I would remind everybody that last year with COVID, we worked very hard, very diligent with making expenditures as tight as possible and as reasonable as possible, so that we had no mill rate increase. So it's been 2 years since there's been an increase. It'd be wonderful if it could be a third year running or a second year running, but it's not realistic for the level of services that we want to continue to provide to our residents. But at the same time, we still are unclear on the revenue picture, and we still have to meet as a group to talk about where our puts and takes are with regard to the expenditures. So with that, maybe for a little more detail, but probably more visual presentation, I suspect, we'll turn it over to Town Manager Kimball.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chairman Orris and Budget Chairman Borowy. Hopefully, can you hear me okay? I'm getting a strange message on
Sure.
my microphone.
I
Okay.
can hear you fine.
All right, thank you. And thank you to the members of the public watching as well. I will be giving a very brief overview of the budget, just taking kind of 5 or 6 key slides out of the presentation I gave at the public hearing. And just going to walk through those really quickly as a general overview. Also one slide on the capital budget, which I know we're technically not taking up in great detail at this point, but just in case there are members of the public that may want to speak to some of the capital projects that have been in the works for a number of months. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. Okay. All right, so we'll just dive right in. So the proposed operating budget, again, includes all of the town, what we call general government side of town operations, and also education, debt service, an appropriation for capital non-recurring, and then a contingency amount. The total budget recommended is $121,577,417. As you'll see, the year-over-year increase from last year, as Budget Chairman Borowy said, the COVID impacted budget is an increase of, in the general government side, of little under $1.7 million, or about 5.15% increase. And on the education side, the Board of Education approved the town manager's, the superintendent's proposed budget of $78,487,052, an increase of just under $4 million, or 5.22% of an increase. Debt service, as you'll see year over year from the appropriation standpoint, is a decrease of $276,000. That's due to a appropriation that was made last year to the debt service reserve fund that's built into that fiscal 21 number. The underlying debt service is actually increasing. And overall, you'll see that the total budget increase with all components included is $5.314 million, or a 4.57% requested increase. I just wanted to highlight some of the key budget drivers. As I just said, the Board of Education's budget actually accounts for about 74% of this overall increase at just under $4 million. Taken alone, if there were no other changes in the budget, that would be a 3.35% increase to the overall budget. So this column here on the far right just sort of sums up to the 4.57 I just mentioned. So you can see the significance of some of the key budget drivers. So again, apart from the Board of Education budget, debt service, not including, again, that reserve fund transfer that we made last year in the amount of $616,000. Underlying debt service is increasing as proposed. We did just have a bond sale, which will adjust this number going forward. But as proposed was $340,000, $339,670, which accounts for about 0.29% of the overall cumulative increase. And then on the general government kind of detail, the budget that I'm most directly responsible for, contractual salaries and wages account for $558,000 increase, or 0.48%. This is due, as the council knows, to really 2 years worth of salary increases due to assumed zero wage freezes last year. Town retirement and pension expenses, the cost of funding some of the legacy pension programs comes to $359,000. Restored positions that were frozen last year, again, as we tried to put forward a budget that would have no tax rate at all, tax increase at all last year. We froze the assessor position, the police officer position, and some summer maintenance worker positions. Restoring those comes to $274,000. Medical insurance increases on the town side of $240,000. Solid waste tonnage increases, again, a pandemic impacted item that the council is aware of as we discuss the public works budget. Increases in residential waste going into the system has increased our requested budget by $137,000. And the community pool subsidy is an increase of $87,000, which we'll talk a little bit more tonight. And also Social Security changes at $84,000. All other changes in my budget, actually, including the reduction of $616,000, come to a reduction of $694,000. So all else throughout the budget is really budget reductions, which ultimately sum up to that $5.3 million. All right, go to the next slide. Arnett, are you able to check and just confirm that nobody's in the waiting room or anything? I guess you can see. I'm assuming. Oh, yeah. All right, we look like we're good. All right, moving on. So the impact on taxes, unfortunately, with other items in on our revenue picture, either flat in terms of state aid or reducing in terms of the amount of fund balance that we're assuming, which last year we did include really an extra $1 million higher than we normally do in terms of use of fund balance. This year, the only other place that you can go for the revenue to balance the expenditures is the property taxes. And so the proposed mill rate is a 1.90 mill increase, which is about 5.7%. As you'll see here, that increase on the average taxpayer with two average vehicles comes to a $439 increase year over year. Again, that's something that is just in the current proposed budget, and the council is actively working to find ways to lower that number. Just really quick, touching on the community pool and WPCD, two other operational budgets that are before the council. The community pool budget proposed is a little over $1 million, an increase of $87,000. And the WPCD, the water pollution plant budget, is a little over $4 million, which is actually a decrease due to less debt service used in their budget. And finally, as I mentioned, the capital budget, the fiscal 22 recommended capital budget, the first year projects total $15 million, which is an increase over last year where we had a much lower 1 year capital request, an increase of $9,060,000. And that includes $5.9 million in my recommended budget for phase 1 of the Bartlett South development, a little over about $4.8 million of public works, sewer, sidewalk, and public property projects, and finally $2.6 million requested by the Board of Education for school projects. All of the details and previous presentations, if anyone would like to see them, are available on our website, CheshireCT.org. So with that, I will turn it back to you, David.
Thank you. One more thing that I would be remiss for those who are following the process. The town has been trying for a couple of years now to do operating budget and capital budget together. Last year, COVID got in the way and it made it difficult to work to do them together. This year, there was a more valiant effort to try to do that. But what's happened is the big elephant in the room, if you will, the school modernization, really hasn't been decided yet. School modernization just gave the report to the town council recently. So that's got to go through the process of review by the Board of Ed and the town council and others. And that would be pieced together with all the different departments. So we aren't concentrating on the capital budget now as we had hoped to and we would expect to. There will be time in the near future once the operating budget is done that we'll start reviewing the individual departments and start maybe, hopefully, coming together on a plan that could work for the schools, because that is the biggest dollar driver of the capital budget and would have us allow us the opportunity to set the priorities once we have all the information together. So it's really an operating budget focus right now, and capital budget will be coming shortly. With that, Mayor Orris, I think I'll hand it back to you to see who's here from the public.
Sure. Yes. Thank you, Chairman Barwi, and thank you, Mr. Kimball, for your presentation. At this point, I would open it up for any questions or comments from members of the public. Arnett, I don't know if you can manage that for us, but certainly we're anxious to hear from people.
Sure. So I can certainly, I know we have one person here at least, and there's two other folks in the room that are, I believe, department heads. We have George and Laura here, at least by the names here. So I think if anyone would like to speak directly to the council now, please do so. We can unmute your line. Anna, I think the name is. If you're interested, please let us know. I'm not seeing anything. Let me see here. Okay. All right, perhaps not interested in speaking. So I know Arnett received a few comments in the comments email box. So maybe Arnett, you can go through those.
Okay, the council received a comment from Heather Fitzgerald, who wrote, "Unfortunately, I cannot be at the meeting tonight. I'm writing in my support of the Bartland Park South project. This is something our town needs and something I believe will greatly benefit the people that live here. From the new illuminated turf field to an actual town green to the memorial walk, there is something for most townspeople, even in the first phase of the project. With the eventual complete build out, it will offer something for everyone. During the pandemic, I think we've all realized the importance of quality outdoor space, and this will provide exactly that for generations to come. I also believe it will help attract new home buyers looking for the right town where they can raise their families, which helps our local economy and serves to keep us ranked as a best place to live. The Bartland Park South project is something I'd like our town council to support and something I'll be looking for when our representatives are running for re-election in the fall. Again, I'd like to reiterate my support for the Bartland Park South project. Many thanks for all you do for Cheshire. Sincerely, Heather Fitzgerald." We have a second comment from Blair Kavanaugh, who writes, "I support the Bartland South Development Project." Thank you, Blair. Those are the two comments received. And if any more come in the next few minutes, I will raise my hand and let you know.
Thank you very much, Ms. Talbot, and thank you for the responses that we did have. And I just want to make sure that the public understands, as we continue down the tracks of this budget process, both operation and our capital budget, that there will be more opportunities for the public to weigh in. And we really much appreciate and look forward to more input. I know it's not simple these days with Zoom. We're not very happy with having to continue along with Zoom either. I think the council is hopefully working towards beginning some public meetings. As long as we can do them safely and people are comfortable with them, we'd like to start reintroducing some of that to the extent that it makes it easier for people to engage in this process. We have always been a very transparent council, and we want to make sure that we understand and know what you all are looking for from your elected officials. And so we really look forward to your input as we continue with this process. If there is nothing else, I guess, Mr. Borwe, do you have anything else on this matter before we move on?
Not regarding the public information session, just
Okay.
whenever you're ready, we'll go into the workshop and review the recreation budget.
Perfect. And Arnett, please let us know if there is anyone from the public who does join, who would like to participate. We'd certainly like to give them that opportunity, even though we're moving past this presentation portion. And with that, we'll move on to the proposed fiscal year 21-22 operating budget, annual capital budget, 5-year capital expenditure plan relative to recreation and pool. And with that, Mr. Borwe, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Orris. And recreation, just to set the table a little bit, recreation was one that was greatly affected by COVID last year in terms of people who were able to be participants in the many, many programs that they run. It's greatly hoped that it'll be back to semi-normal this coming summer. I know parents are anxious for that. Kids are anxious for that. Everybody's anxious to get life back. But this department was one that was greatly affected by that. By COVID. So I think with that, I'll ask the town manager if he has any highlights or if he wants to just hand it right over to the Mr. Golick, our department head.
All right, thank you. Thank you, David. We will, I will pretty much just kick it over to Director Golick. I will advise that in the detail book for the council members following along, the recreation budget does start on page 169, 170, and 171 for the actual detail line items. And yeah, with that, we also have Elizabeth Main here on the line and Sheila Adams from the pool, who will be certainly chiming in at different times. And when we get into the pool budget, Sheila will be answering some questions there. So I think with that, John, if you're ready, I'll kick it over to you and just let me know when you want to share your screen and go ahead and unmute your line if you could.
Yeah. There you go,
Sure.
John.
Thank you.
Evening,
Good
welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. I did put together, if you wouldn't mind, a quick, brief presentation, unlike my 72-pager from last year. This one is a shortened version, just giving some overview that I think is important for our department and our team at Park and Rec to just kind of go over, and then we could get into the nuts and bolts of revenue and then each section of the budget. So Sean, when you're ready, if you want to kick that on.
Sure, yeah, and it's
That'd
only
be great.
71 pages this time, so this is
My God. Okay, so our operating budget fiscal year 21-22, just page 2. Quick little highlights page. Even though we were pretty crushed by the pandemic, as far as the parks and physical improvements to some of our properties, it was a busy summer. I mean, a busy summer and fall. We were able to finish the Bartlett South Master Plan, which we presented to the full council in January of this past year. We completed the reconstruction of the basketball courts at Youth Center, McNamara, Cheshire Park. The Cheshire Park baseball fields and fencing, fields 1, 2, and 3, were reconditioned through Department of Public Works, as well as the field lights were upgraded on field 2 with a program through Department of Public Works. We completed the reconstruction of the Cheshire Park tennis courts and created the very popular dedicated pickleball courts with some drainage support, again, from Public Works. We completed the renovation of the Kids in Motion Kim Playground at Bartlett Park with, again, lots of support from Public Works with pulling out some of the old equipment and helping with the surfacing and improving the surfacing there at the playground. Had an opportunity to also work with American Ramp Company, ARC, to do a warranty inspection on the skateboard park, which still has 3 years of under the warranty. And they did restore and update the platform panes with some new guardrails and treated the ramps with some Max Grip paint, and the park received a much needed upgrade. We worked with Weston and Sampson, the aquatics division, probably from the start of the fall through January, February of this past year, to do 2 different assessments on the pool, one on the pool physical plant, and then the other one most recently on all of the HVAC and the mechanicals of the pool, so that we could we could try to avoid, future surprises and better capital plan as the pool, and Sheila could talk to it later, is aging. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we're approaching 21 or 22 years old. And there's some other things that we're going to have to address probably in 4 or 5 years to be on the watch for the main roof structure. We'll have to start looking at that in capital planning for the eventual replacement. We also spent time last year with my chairman of the Park and Rec Commission and the review of the entire commission, taking a look and a crack at the park and recreation ordinances that we made a recommendation and passed off to the council for later review at some point with the council ordinance review team. And then just a quick summary of community pool upgrades. Within the last year, last June, we did the liner. We did a new chlorinator. The UV system was knocked out from that storm. We had some insurance money and a claim to restore that. Recently, a new pump was restored on an aging pump that was 20 years old. And currently, right now, we're reviewing some issues with the 2 boilers that are on site, not communicating with each other. They are operating, but we still have a little bit to go on servicing because they can't be monitored remotely, which is, causing a little bit of an issue in case there were a problem, and addressing it in a timely fashion. One last thing on this highlight page is, along with the town unveiling its new webpage, the ladies in my office, Stephanie and Elizabeth, have worked hard with our RecTrack management software and doing a new update and upgrade. And if I can, Sean, I was going to have Elizabeth pop that up just to show us and show everybody. We're probably going to go live with it maybe tomorrow or next week, but it's a much more improved version of what people are used to. Elizabeth.
All right, can everybody see this new webpage?
Yep.
Yep,
Yes.
okay. So this will be the new landing page when people go to online registration. Still working on the graphic that's gonna go up here under Browse All Activities. But it's a much cleaner feel. So for example, if I take you to recreation program.
You're muted.
Sorry, you missed all of that wonderful talking? What a bummer. So it's mobile responsive, but I'm looking at it on a big screen here. So all of these are clickable. So if I take you to recreation programs, it's a simple click. Then it brings up all of the current recreation programs. And on the previous version, it used to be very long because we have a lot of some classes. For example, let's see, if we look at our Mixville camp, there are a lot of sections. So you used to land on the page and you would see all of this at once, and you just scroll and scroll and scroll. So now it's a much cleaner look where you just scroll and find the exact program that you're looking for. And it's just a couple clicks to get you into the program. You find what you want, check the box, add to cart, and proceed to checkout. And if I go back to our homepage there, we also have redirects right now. We have our Mixville passes, which will be coming soon, or our pavilion rentals. If you click on that, it brings you right back to the town's webpage where you can download the facility rental form and submit that to our office. So that's just a quick glance at the updated registration page for Parks and Rec. We also have pool programs and Arts Place programs because they're all serviced by the same software. So we should be going live with that tomorrow, and we'll send that out via our Facebook in constant contact with a couple other things going on for April break.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Okay, Sean, next page, please. So collaborations, we continued with adult youth athletic organizations and having another year of successful field distribution open forums this year through Zoom, as we're trying to advocate further for improved relationships and facility development, and also developing master field schedules and calendars. We worked with you, the town council, to adopt and increase field facility fees for non-resident commercial entities. We worked with the Friends of Library to create the Silly Walk that got a ton of hits on our Facebook page at Bartlett South to provide families with an outlet during the pandemic. We assisted Arts Place and Cheshire Library Chamber of Commerce with their first annual Scarecrow event that actually came through in a joint meeting that we had with Youth and Social Services, the library, and Arts Place with Rec Department, talking about different programs that we all offer, just trying to kind of get together and maybe find ways to collaborate and do new things. We worked with the Lions Club to refurbish and recreate Santa's chair that was incorporated into the new tree lighting event at Bartlett Park, with much assistance from DPW and adorning the tree, our second tree with lights that was well received, and our office received a ton of positive comments. The summer concerts were rebranded to Bartlett Beats, but we didn't get a chance to do that. But we have a full slate of plans, and hopefully those will get off the ground and not have any COVID restrictions. We did make a change to that, and we're going to be doing all the concerts on Fridays during the month of August. So we kicked it back a couple of weeks, hoping that by then in August things will be we'll be in a better position to maybe have larger community gatherings. We created some new community special events, Lucky Leprechauns, the Turkey Hunt with Chick-fil-A of Wallingford sponsoring, the Nights of Lights and Sights home decorating contest with a lot of help from the Cheshire Fire Department, providing the prize squad with a fire department escort. And then throughout this whole school year, we've been hosting the Board of Education's Community Life Skills program at the youth center. Next page, please. Mixville Park update. I just felt that there was probably going to be some questions, and maybe I could answer some of them now, but certainly would entertain questions later. The new gatehouse with electricity and a mobile hotspot that will operate our management software is scheduled for installation May 26th. We purchased a new gatehouse from a vendor in Cheshire, so that'll be a nice addition. Public Works is already called before you dig to schedule the demo of the existing one. I know Public Works is planning for the new beach sand this spring and have worked with engineering, and it's next up going to Inland Wetlands to get their hopefully their approval soon so that we could restore the beach. The old baseball backstop has been removed, given a nicer vista. The arborvitaes adjacent to the changing room have already been limbed up and give a better view of the pond and don't give that impression of a not safe changing area. The basketball court, we started the rehab this week. Hinding Tennis was there doing all the crack sealing and repairing. Next up will be the full court seal. And then after that would be painting of the court and all the game lines. And then finally, I'm working with an Eagle Scout, Ryan Camp, who's going to be refurbishing the main park sign, bringing it closer to Notch Road, turning the sign perpendicular, preserving the original sign there now that was another Eagle Scout project, cleaning that up and then doing his other side that's part of his project. And he'll finish that up with landscaping the area around the sign. Future plans for consideration. Part of our capital plan is to restore the building that was the addition that was behind the large pavilion. We had our rec commission meeting, our monthly April meeting last night. We talked a lot about Mixville, including the old concession stand building and possibly repurposing that in some way, exploring a network of walkways from the parking lot to the beach area, to the playground, to the basketball court where there are none now, making it challenging for folks that have some mobility issues. We're exploring the use of paddle boards and canoes and kayaks, possibly rentals, examining the lifeguard house. Is it prudent to return lifeguard staff to monitor the waterfront or repurpose that building? Hopefully we'll get the chance to work with the environmental planner and find ways to open up the shoreline of the smaller pond for greater access and vistas for fishing and just having better views of some water. And then I'm also exploring, and I think I brought this up at one other time, but we've been discussing it at rec commission meetings. I've been working with a designer that I've worked with in Wallingford, who's also a park and rec commissioner in Wallingford, who built the 18-hole disc golf course at Lufberry Park. He happens to feel that the Mixville location to do an 18-hole golf course there could easily be, just by itself right now, a top 5 disc golf course in the state of Connecticut. Also, that would mean that if we get frequent visitors to play, during those months of May to Labor Day that we're charging for parking at the park, that could be a nice little revenue generator. I don't know, Elizabeth, do you have that map? If we have time to share that, if you don't mind, just to kind of give you an idea of what it might look like. Can you make that a little bit closer? Or expand it a little bit. So some of the nice features that Mixville offers, a lot of these disc golf course are in parks in the woods, in areas that the town is just, some towns or municipalities are allowing these to happen. They don't have some of the open meadows and fields that we have here. And certainly for a disc golfer, those are nice features to have: openness to throw, to also be in the woods, but then also have some water features. And so Mixville, with both of its ponds, certainly gives you the triangle of things that disc golfers are looking for. So you'll probably hear more about this later, but all of these future plans are going to be put together in sort of a management plan, working with our office and the Park and Rec Commission over the next couple months. Thanks, Elizabeth. Okay, Sean. So now we'll get into revenues, David. Just as an overview, our projected estimate, fiscal year 21, after the budget was approved and since the pandemic had continued, we canceled basketball and not been able to offer many of our programs, as you alluded to in the opening. We anticipate opening and operating more programs later this spring as the vaccine rollout continues, and we're once again able to host programs outside. We also expect to run 1 week of summer camp before the fiscal year and see some registrations for later weeks of summer camp in this fiscal year. Since the approval of the fourth priority group for field rentals, we also expect to see some field revenue generated later this spring. With the projected revenue, we hope to offer our full complement of programs this summer, but we do, and we're kind of real about it, expect to experience some hesitancy to return to in-person programming. We will not be offering summer camp for children entering grades 7 through 9 because the main attractions are off-site trips, and we're still not able to provide those. Some of the decreases may be offset by the potential increase, hopefully realized by Priority Group 4 field fee increases. We've calculated other facility use, the youth center and pavilions, conservatively because we don't know yet what or if there will be gathering size limitations during the summer's pavilion season. I could tell you though, we opened up rentals last Thursday. Friday was the holiday, we weren't open. And today is Thursday. We've had close to almost 50 pavilion rentals come into our office in the 4 days, which is nice to see. We have estimated 4 rentals per month per pavilion, July to October 21, and 6 rentals per month in May to June 22. We estimate no youth center rentals because the main room gets hot. It's not climate controlled and still under restrictions due to COVID. We've estimated 3 reservations per month in September through October and 6 per month for November 21 through March 22, and then 4 per month, April to June 2022. We have seen a decrease in rentals since summer 2019. Some of this may be attributed to the enforcement of requiring certificate of insurances, COIs, increased insurance requirements for those allowing alcohol at their events. We do not have any data since the pandemic cut all of our rentals this past year. We are enforcing the alcohol ordinance, so to make sure that people do, so that we're protecting the town, getting certificate of insurances, and sometimes it's forcing those people to get event policies that could run between 180 to 300, maybe even more, depending on the size and what they're offering at their particular function for that particular day. Any questions? If not, we'll continue going on to the administration section.
Are there questions within that section? Specifically? All right, why don't you go on? Maybe we'll have more at the end.
Okay, so what I did now is I just went through the budget and I just pulled out highlights, the highlights where there were probably a little bit more of a significant increase from what was appropriated in 21 to what we're requesting for this year. So in administration, the highlights for 5105, the overtime, the estimate and request, my admin has been doing most of the administrative duties since there was no other support staff personnel. Once we are back to normal operations, there certainly will be a transitional period integrating our program coordinator into sharing some of the admin responsibilities. If you recall, we had the retirement of secretary, the position was eliminated. Public Works did a really nice job during the pandemic, and if you haven't been down to the rec department, we kind of redesigned the admin offices and pulled everybody to the front of the building. So all four of us are on that south side of the building. And part of the program coordinator's job is to do, kind of be the troubleshooter and be the person picking up the phone, answering, program related questions, facility, and assist the admin, maybe with some other admin type support duties. So we need to see a little bit of an increase there. 5204, the program materials. This line encompasses all materials for the office and programs. We had not purchased materials for basketball this year. However, we'll be purchasing camp startup supplies for this summer. We're planning on operating a full slate of programs next year, and we'll need supplies for summer camp basketball in addition to other programming that we're looking to do. 5207, printing. We did not do 2 of the 3 seasonal program brochures this year because we didn't offer anything. We did offer some things. We made utilization of Constant Contact, and then, our various social media pages that we operate. But we do plan on doing a late spring, summer one will be coming out. Elizabeth is working on that currently. We do plan on producing and putting out all 3 seasonal brochures next year. Auto equipment maintenance. This line is used to be for the RecTrack management software, which is now included with other tech items. With Apex, we should spend a little bit to customize the RecTrack for a better customer experience, with Elizabeth just showed you, which from my standpoint is a much better product than what we've experienced. And then also the Adobe Creative Cloud for designing brochures will now appear in this line instead of advertising. The Adobe is an annual license fee. 5502, the meetings, conferences. We did not attend the annual conference due to COVID, even though they still did have it. But we did attend also quarterly training meetings that our Connecticut Recreation Parks Association hosts quarterly. We are planning to attend CRPA annual conference this November, and also attend professional meetings and those quarterlies that are happening regularly. Next slide, please. On the recreation side, again, just a few of the highlights, not all of the line items. The permanent part-time line, the part-time program coordinator was moved to a full-time position last year, as we alluded to before. We'd like to also request to move the therapeutic rec coordinator to a permanent part-time classification and pull her out of the temporary part-time. This is just a better, more accurate description of the position. The 5104 temporary part-time line, we will see some programs, 1 week of summer camp and the balance of the TR coordinator's hours this fiscal year. We spent quite a bit on Mixville Rangers last August to Labor Day. If you remember, it was kind of a nightmare not having boots on the ground, and Mixville being a free-for-all, and plenty of meetings, plenty of phone calls, plenty of emails, and trying to create access to the park, feeling relatively safe and having a clean park. And I know that I did receive some favorable emails from members of the public thanking us because there was a drastic improvement from August to Labor Day, when that part of the summer was over. We had not budgeted anything for that position in the summer of 2020. Again, I just said that this response to a better management of the park. It's been offset somewhat by not having the basketball staff and building supervisor expenses this past year. Since we haven't had programs, we should be coming under budget. Minimum wage, that's the big one. Minimum wage is increasing and our staff expenses will increase accordingly. Elizabeth, you want to share the sheets with the pay rates? I think we don't have them in the book, but if you wanted to share those, if we can. just so everybody can kind of get a feel of what, where we're at.
Pull that up just a minute. Sorry about
Okay.
John, I don't think it's a big deal if you
Okay.
can't get access to it.
Yeah, that's fine. If we need to move.
Okay, we had broken down the number just so that you could see where all those dollars were going to and what they were for. If you need it, we can get it to you. Lines 5201 and through 5207, if you recall, those were moved to the administration side, just for easier access for myself and not having, multiple lines for the same thing, just kind of a consolidation. 5405 rental lease, camp storage trailers at Mixville, and the portalets. That makes up this line. Portalets are at the school ball field locations that are being used for Cheshire-based programs due to the lack of inventory of bathrooms on the town side or in the fields, the lack of inventory. A lot of our programs really rely on the need of fields at Doolittle and Highland, Cheshire High School, Dodd, and a lot of times throughout the summer, from June through August, there isn't a place to be able to go to the bathroom. So I think it's important that we continue providing those units at those locations. Next slide, Sean, please. Celebrations. Again,
Actually,
just a few.
If I
Yes.
can interrupt just a second, because Mr. Slocum is able to hear us and see, but he's not able to ask questions. And if you go back one more page, Sean, he texted me 2 questions, so they're timely to the prior page. So if you don't mind, I'll ask them. Is line 5103, which is the increase in the part-time staff, does that have no net cost impact because there's an increase in participants and therefore an increase in revenue?
Elizabeth, can you chime in on that one? From the, because we're just
Can you
moving here
repeat
from
that question? I want to make sure I understood it.
Yeah, line 5103, which is the program help and labor for running the programs.
I think 5104, actually, yeah, I think for the programs.
Right. Is there, because that expense is going up, but is that really no cost impact because there's also increased revenue for it?
So as far as the minimum wage going up, that's not exactly offset because that's going to drive up our residents' fees for the programs dramatically. So it's not an exact offset, but we did try to increase a little bit, nudge up with the minimum wage going up a dollar every year. It's a little bit challenging and people are pretty strapped right now. So we want them to be able to get their childcare, and camp is one of the big items. We can look at increasing the basketball fees to offset that further come winter if you'd like to see that. But for the camp, we did already announce the existing camp fees. And they did go up a little bit, but I just don't know exactly with how many people are going to be coming to the programs. That's the other challenge. You still have to have the same number of staff. But if people don't quite show up, and we have smaller ratios right now, which are some of the things we were grappling with last year, but at least we have a better sense of what's safe out there and how to appropriately handle the kids. They've been really successful and thriving at school, and we'd like to continue that this summer.
All right. Thank you. And his other question regards to brochures, and it says, are they still needed with the fact that everybody is used to going online and on the web for programs? So maybe rather than the cost of printing the brochures, we could just do a postcard to mail out to people with the information of where to go to get the registration and information on the courses.
I mean, that's something that we could. Go ahead.
Sorry. We do still have a fair number of people, even with our limited programs, who are walking into our building and asking us to print out our brochure, and that's just coming out of our regular copy paper, and it's not a pretty version of it. And we have had people saying, oh, geez, I really miss the brochure. It's just not cost effective right now with our 4-page brochure to be covering all that mailing cost. I think with the enhanced programs and so many new people moving to town, at least for the first year, it will be important to actually get that brochure in people's hands so that they know what we are. Several years ago, we tried the postcard idea, and the postage cost is still pretty high, and we did not get a great return on enrollments based on the postcard.
Okay.
David, also, if I could add too, my first year here, we were inserting it into Cheshire Herald, and Cheshire Herald, their subscription rate, I believe, is less than 3,500. And there's more towns there's more homes in the town, and we're just not reaching everybody with all of our services. And, through our professional trade groups, people will tell you that they like to have something in their hands still, and it's still one of the top two things to promote your programs. If there certainly was a savings, and maybe we could look to maybe merge and maybe do 2 instead of the 3 seasonal ones, and we can maybe work to that. Maybe, I could talk to Elizabeth, and maybe there's a different strategy that way. But I think there needs to be a presence at least a couple times a year.
All right. I'm being texted that the first question about the 5103 line and the cost impact change, is it a reclassification of the therapy person, is what he's asking.
I understand the question now. Sorry about that. So yes, the permanent part-time person is being moved to, the temporary part-time person is moved to the permanent part-time. So as far as that goes, it's a wash, but the temporary part-time line still goes up because of the increase in minimum wage. Does that make sense?
I would assume so. And as much as we're trying to accommodate everybody in this age of IT difficulties and whatnot, I appreciate the answers. Are there other questions regarding these parts of the budgets, or are we ready to move on, and then we'll ask? All right, well, let's move on, conclude, because I think you're near the end, and then we'll open it up to general questions.
Celebrations. Did we get through?
I think
Did we start that or no?
we did.
No,
I
did.
did.
John, you did not. No.
We did not. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So the highlights here for celebrations, the 5104, because of some of the new events that we were starting to roll out, and some events that we would like to do, there is a need for some additional part-time staff. So it's a slight increase, $600, but we'd like to see that happen. We got a great response from those events that we did put on this past year. 5204 program materials. Due to COVID-19, most of our special events were canceled and greatly reduced. The traditional parade is canceled at this time for this year. We're just waiting to find out what signs and banners need to be purchased, or this line can be reduced. Certainly, if we're looking at the, bear with me for 1 second, the Memorial Parade bands and shuttle service, there's $5,500 that we're probably going to be able to eliminate, and depending on what the needs are for Mr. White and his crew putting together the mobile parade. There's another $1,000 for signs and banners that we may not need as well, unless Elizabeth, you heard something recently that I don't know yet.
I'm not aware of anything like that right now.
Okay. We plan to offer a wide variety moving forward of family-oriented special events to enhance the special events that we currently offer. We experienced a great response to the new events: Get Punked at Halloween, the Turkey Hunt at Thanksgiving, and the Nights of Lights and Sights Christmas home decorating program that we did at Christmas time had gotten a lot of reviews and a lot of positive feedback and comments. So we're looking to restore those, do them again, and possibly, if we can, see those grow a little bit. The 5206, the advertising, this included in the administration line. We'll actually put our Bartlett Beats advertising and special event advertising here moving forward. And then finally, 5408 program services, the fall fireworks, Memorial Day parade bands canceled due to no parade. The Bartlett Beats were canceled. They were eliminated. We have parade expenses. We will have parade expenses for 2022. And then all the concert expenses for 2021, the stage, the sound, the lights, and the entertainment will be there. In conclusion, I just wanted to throw it out there with all my field meetings and all my dialogue with all of the variety of youth and adult groups in town. There needs to be a movement to improve some of the school fields that we're going to rely on. When we experienced Cheshire Park being closed last year because of some vendor issues, it caused us to scramble and relocate men's adult softball, Cheshire Youth Baseball to an extent, and some other softball programs to school fields. The school did a great job trying to cut those fields in for us. We got through the adult men's softball. They were greatly appreciated at the mobilization of the Highland, one of the two Highland school fields in the Doolittle school field. This year I'm experiencing some issues again with Bartlett, the lacrosse fields not draining particularly well, people wanting to be out there. We have rugby that's up off of Mixville Road at using some open field up in the upper Mixville. If we get a rainy spring, lacrosse season's going to be short, or we're going to have to go to Quinnipiac where soccer is and try to come up with an equitable schedule, or maybe take back a few days that soccer has so that we could accommodate the needs of the boys and girls youth lacrosse program. I just think in my opinion that the town is short one or two rectangular fields until improvements can be made at Bartlett Park, or if there was the ability to light a field either at Bartlett or at Quinnipiac Park, that certainly would create another field area with scheduling Sunday to Saturday another field and provide some scheduling flexibility. The Park and Rec Department supports the addition of a parks maintainer to the Public Works Department for a variety of reasons. The main one of our department is the need for field maintenance on school grounds to support the town athletic programs I just talked about, that need space for, to operate their programs. During my brief tenure, which we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary, there are still many other park related projects that require annual attention. The demand for field lighting, field lining, mowing is extreme with some of those larger areas like Bartlett Park and Quinnipiac, especially when the grass starts growing on a regular basis. Those areas need to be cut twice. They need to be lined at least once a week. Those take a lot of man hours to take care of, and that's just trying to stay even. And it doesn't allow for other projects to be taken on or do some other field improvements that may need to be happening at that time. I do want to thank you, Chairman Orris, and the entire council for your financial support and confidence in us. Sean Kimball, Town Manager, for your oversight and guidance on a day-to-day basis. Special thanks to my chairman, Dr. Pat Duffy, and the entire Rec Commission for their efforts representing the public, overseeing the operation of the Parks and Rec Department. And with that, Elizabeth and I are here to take some questions, or I know, Chairman Orris, you talked about the capital budget. I do have one slide on Bartlett South if we had time. If not, we could defer to another time. Basically, it was just a summary of the 5 questions when I came before the council with Weston and Sampson. There were 4 or 5 questions that the council needed to have answers. I have those answers. They're on a slide. But like I said, if we don't have time, we just want to get into the operational end, we can take care of that and just bring that back another time.
I think we could touch on it. It sounds like one slide is brief, but again, the capital budget is not the focus now because we've got to get all the pieces together. I will note that Councilman Talbot and I have the same question, and as we were hoping that we could put up on the screen the revenues line, because that will be helpful as well. I don't know, Sean, you're going to be able to pull that up to help us with that. But also John, you took the time to prepare the slide. So if we can see it on the capital, that would be great.
Sure. Great. Thanks. Do you have that, Sean? Yep.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull it up right now. Does this sit here?
Yes, it is. So we last met January 26th. There was not an adoption. We left it open. There were still some questions. So I'm just going to stab at it and go right into it. The plan could be modified. I know that Councilman Slocum had a concern about the softball field in its current location. On the original plan, the backstop was which would be the new entrance in and out of the park. We're able to move that back to its current configuration, although it's not optimal because you would like a field to be in a north-south orientation for safety and lack of sun glare and all that. But to answer your question, yes, we could move that softball field or keep it or show another alternative plan, keeping it there in its current orientation. The other question was, can we move the field that would be eliminated to the back of 5 to 7, M5 and 7 out by the pool? I would prefer not to, because now you're taking even more rectangular fields out of the overall field inventory, which in my estimation, and which I'm experiencing with all of your town groups, that were in short supply. With the main ones at Bartlett being poor draining. Is there a way to use the current approved curb cut to the Chapman parcel to eliminate the Elmwood Drive alignment? I don't know if you recall, early on, the design team went through concepts, very preliminary, and decided to move forward with aligning the driveway, keeping it consistent with Elmwood Drive. Weston and Sampson's team later proposed this location as the most logical one. Traffic light is not warranted. The alignment helps with decision-making process when vehicles are directly aligned across the street from each other, hopefully minimizing risk of traffic incidents. There will be likely an administrative review at OSTA. This can be explored further during the design development stage if we get there. The next question was, is there an opportunity to make the town green larger to the size of the Great Lawn? The answer is yes. Weston and Sampson had calculated what the current congregational church green is, roughly 32,000 square feet. The green on the plan of the Bartlett South is 20,000 square feet, slightly smaller, but the space is more usable. You don't have the pinch points in the corners like the church property. But certainly, once you got into the design phase, if you wanted to increase that 20,000 square feet footprint, you certainly can. And then finally, can we eliminate the 6 or so trees adjacent to the Route 10 of the town green to give the appearance of opening the space? Weston and Sampson highly recommends not doing that, as they're intending to raise the grade of the town green to the same elevation of the existing sidewalk along Route 10 in Bartlett Park. They're going to be specifying the right tree with a vase-shaped crown, minimum branch height of 72 inches, so that there'll be a clear visibility through as you're driving by or walking to the town green area. He did refer to an image of the green at South Main Street in Southbury. I don't have that link, but Sean did pull up this picture of a representation of the Southbury green. I don't know if that looks like that currently, but that is a picture of it at one time, and you could see that you could see through it. So, thank you for the indulgence.
Thank you. All right, so one more, if we can get the revenue on screen, and then we'll open it up to questions.
So the slide from the beginning on revenue? Dave?
Yeah, I want to see the one that shows the revenue, the multi-years and the.
Let me make
3
sure.
years ago, and then last year budgeted and actually realized, and then this year's recommendation. I forgot, I think it was page, did I see page 85? Let me see what page,
Um,
111
yeah, that's in
in
another
that
folder.
area.
Yeah, give me a second. So not in John's presentation. You're talking about.
No, it was not in his
Yep,
presentation.
Yep. Hold on. I can get that from. Wait, hold on. I gotta stop the share. There we go. All right. 1 second. Let me pull that from.
I would offer to share it because I have it on my other screen, but it's sideways, because of the way the page is on the.
Well, we could all sort of tip ourselves off.
Yeah, I was doing that.
David, where is this revenue page? Is it in, what book is it in?
The other book, page 111.
Page 111 in the,
Horizontal book.
Or is it? Thank you.
You,
Just
Yes.
There we go.
And John, while you're looking to pull this up, you or Sean, I do, clearly we want to be looking at these revenues, and we should be, but I think this is going to be another stab in the dark to an extent, in light of where we still are in COVID. So I'm not sure how well we're going to be able to rely on revenue numbers from Park and Rec at this point. Would you agree with that, John?
I would say so, only because I don't know what the consumer confidence is going to be, where we're going to be with the pandemic. Will people like the design of some of the programs because of maybe restrictions that we have to put on it? I mean, a lot of this is still a moving target for us, program-wise.
My concern actually with regard to the revenue is that it's a significant increase over the last complete year that we had. And I understand some of the fee structure with the fields would add to that, but my guess was that you had a lot more expectation of participation, and I don't know that we're going to be able to get a good handle on it. There
So
we
do
go.
you think that we should be a little bit more conservative then?
Well, unless you have a reason why we're expecting $100,000 more in revenue than we had in our last complete year. And I wondered if that was some of it, the fact that we received the money in a different fiscal year because it's a summer program after the start of the fiscal year. If some of that was that we might expect to receive money this fiscal year coming up for the summer of July and August programs in 2022. And so that was what my question was, kind of.
Elizabeth, what do you think?
And Dave, I'm agreeing with you. That's why I was making the statement. This is
Yeah.
going to be a tough one for us
Yeah.
to pinpoint, I think.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if Mr. Talbot, you might have something along that line as well for your reason for asking that.
That was, you guys are right on point. That is exactly the reason why I wanted to bring them up, because, we're going up 110 with still not knowing where we're going to stand over the start of the new fiscal year. So that was my concern as well, gentlemen.
Yeah.
2020 was not actually, yes, it's a completed year, but we were already feeling the impacts of the pandemic. We had to offer a lot of refunds for all of our spring programs. So the last real year that I would say that we had, our revenue was, I believe it was about 341,275. So this is lower than that.
Well, makes
So
me
that's-
feel a little better.
That makes me a lot more comfortable, Mr. Farrell.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I think that's good.
Elizabeth, thank you. That's
Thank you,
Here, I
Elizabeth.
just pulled
very
up
helpful.
Oh, good. Here we go.
This has more years of history. It doesn't have, I didn't.
Yeah, that's
look at any
good.
Charts for it here, but can you guys see this right here?
Yep.
Elizabeth knew those numbers. There you go.
All right, so, sorry, I had to pull this from a prior one. So this is fiscal 16 through. So here you see, if you, I guess the last full non-COVID impacted at all year, 341, average of the prior 4 inclusive is 315,793 for these 4 years here.
And you're using 280
Yes.
We are
with the increase in fees for the fields. Okay.
correct.
A little more.
Well, and the uncertainty with the first few months of, presumably the first few months of the fiscal year. So I'm comfortable with the 280. So that satisfies my question, but
And with the rentals of the pavilions right out of the gate being fast and furious, that's only going to get better.
All right. All right, I'll open it up to general questions regarding recreation before we get into the pool, because that's an enterprise fund. So Mr. Orris, and then I see Mr. Walsh.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Barr. I just have kind of a general comment. The budget's pretty simple, and I think we'll be able to figure it out pretty well as we go further down the tracks. But I want to just mention, as the town knows, the council has supported a significant investment in our parks, our courts over the last year or so. And I really want to commend you, John and Elizabeth, and your staff in the implementation of that. I think you've done a phenomenal job. There is no question that you guys are putting your stamp on this department. And I think it's very evident to this community. And I just commend you for that work. Now, we obviously have budget constraints, and we're going to do our job relative to that as a council. But wherever we end up with this budget, I want you both to understand that you guys are doing a great job. It is a very important component to our community, particularly now when people are seeking more outdoor activities. So I think both of you and your staff are spot on the things that you're focusing on. And certainly from my vantage point, we're looking to support you as best we can in light of the fiscal issues that we're dealing with. The last thing I would bring up, which is something I talked about earlier in the budget process, and John and Elizabeth, you weren't part of that, I don't believe. I did get a lot of reach out from the community this winter about trying to expand the usability of Mixville in the wintertime, whether it be, more organization around sledding and or skating and the like. So, as we go forward, I would love to hear more about how we can safely and appropriately expand services. I hear from many people who have been in this community for a long, long time that was really the go-to place for kids many years ago in the wintertime, and would love to see that opportunity again. So that's something I'm personally very interested in hearing more about, and I'd appreciate it to the extent you both can look into that. But thank you for all you're doing.
Sure. So if I could comment, last night we had our monthly rec commission meeting, and we spent probably a good 40 minutes on talking about spring, summer, and winter, all Mixville. So over the course of the next couple of meetings, probably by the June meeting, we'll have some sort of a template that we could share or give a report out to you of what we're looking at. Also working in conjunction with Public Works, because we need them to mesh and work with us too. So, and they've been very cooperative. So it's been a good partnership so far. Keep building.
Great. Thank you both, and thank you to all your staff.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Orris. Councilman Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I want to echo Mr. Orris's comments about what a great job you guys have been doing. Just the little things that you do, the leprechaun thing, our town manager was part of that, so I was happy to see that. The scarecrows, all that stuff just helps build this community, makes it closer knit, and I know I appreciate it, but I've heard from a number of other people saying they can't believe how many things are going on in this community, and that's credit to you and your staff, John. So I appreciate that. The pickleball courts we've spoken about have been an incredible thing for this community, and from what you told us, there are other communities now coming to you for advice on how to do it in their community, which is great. So all those things we have approved to allow you guys to do that, I think are coming out to show that they are popular and there are things that this community wants. I also want to thank you for all the hard work you guys did at Mixville last year. I mean, that was, I was part of that, and it was a little crazy at times, and you guys figured it out and made it a safe place for people to go. So leading to that, my questions would be, obviously there's going to be a fees going forward. Have you set the fees for Mixville yet? Like for a yearly fee versus a daily fee, out of towners versus in town people?
Elizabeth, you want to take that one?
We are currently working on setting the fees. And we have a proposed fee. Should I present that, or is that just an official fee? That I was a little confused. We had some emails going back and forth this week trying to settle on some fees. So
And not unless you guys have approved it. I just curious if you had said it yet, but yeah, I mean, it's obvious. I mean, there has to be some kind of fee structure there. I do like that you have the Mixville Rangers. I think that helps people feel a lot more comfortable and safer knowing that there is somebody from the town who is walking around that area. So I do like that. In terms of the fields, the school fields especially, I mean, anybody who's had kids play in sports in this town have always said, you know, our fields are not nearly as good as any of the fields in other towns. So, I mean, I would support it if I could see that, you know, by fixing the fields, it will increase the revenue because other groups would be using it. And that's what has to, I mean, like Mr. Orr said, I mean, we're in a budget crunch right now, and we have to figure out ways to raise revenue to do some of these things. And if we could do that, you know, whether you want to put lights on a field or whatever, if you could show us where the revenue that we would increase will almost offset or get close to that, I'm all for looking into doing things like that. But I just wanted to make sure that I passed along my appreciation for all the good things you have been doing, the new ideas, and everything that's going on in this town. And I appreciate it.
Thank you for your support.
All right. Thank you. I had seen Councilman Veliver and then Mr. Jenks after that. So Mr. Veliver.
Thank you very much. And I'll echo the sentiments. I think, John, you and Elizabeth, you guys are doing a great job with this and with what we have and all the curveballs that are being thrown at you over the last couple of years and the programming that you have. So, but what you are able to do has been very well received, and you've also created things that we hadn't even thought of yet. So that's always nice to have. I have a couple just quick questions. One, this is sort of a follow-up of a question we've had over the past few years, and maybe last year wasn't really a good representation of it because probably some of those programs weren't even available. But are we all set working out the issue of the facility manager when people rent space from Park and Rec? Over the past years, we've had this issue about, you know, whether it's the basketball program or other things, cost depending on where they're renting it from, what the cost is going to be, all those things. Has that all been worked out? Are we set on fees on that? I said, I don't know whether those programs even ran this past year, but obviously, hopefully they'll be coming back. And are we squared away with that so that certain leagues and certain groups aren't paying more than others?
You want to handle that one, Elizabeth? Because that's an interesting one. Because go ahead.
That was primarily our school use fee for different groups. And we really only coordinate for the local sports groups, their use of the schools. Everybody else goes directly to the schools. And we will be needing to look at that fee again because that fee was set, it was brought back down to $15 an hour, and minimum wage keeps creeping closer and closer to that. So it will be something we need to look at. And having a whole year when we were out of the schools, some of that there have been a lot of changes in the schools, and we'll have to look at in the fall where the schools are as far as letting people back in from the general public. Hopefully we'll be in that position, but it's a little, I think, early to say right now, perhaps.
Okay, great. And then this follows up something that Councilman Walsh had said. As part of your proposal, you are going to be swapping out the gatehouse at Mixville and providing them with a hotspot where they can tie into the system. And I apologize. I really probably should use the Mixville Park more often, but I just don't. So my question goes to when people want to use it. In the past, they've had to go somewhere like town hall or wherever and get a pass for the day. Are they now able to just go to Mixville and get a pass? Is this system with its hotspot, will that allow them to be able to sort of have person at the gate determine, oh, yes, we have capacity, so yes, you can just buy your pass right here at the gate? Or will they still have to do it somewhere else?
The preferred way would be for them to purchase it in advance online. That's going to be the easiest way for them to do it. And we're looking at doing both season and day passes, and they would be able to purchase both of those or either of those online. But for the person who makes a last minute decision to go to Mixville, yes, they would be able to purchase their pass on site, provided they have a credit card there to use.
Okay, and that'll be new because of this new gatehouse and system, correct?
Correct. We didn't have any electricity there before.
Okay, that's great. And then my last question goes to this. I got an email today actually on this issue. So, and you had mentioned the fields at Cheshire Park, but I guess I'd like to get a little bit more information on the fields at McNamara, because I saw an email chain that involved some discussion that there is some, from the baseball users' perspective, said there is some good news that the town hired a private contractor to renovate McNamara Fields, including McNamara 4, and they're working on McNamara 2, and that they bought the fence for McNamara 4. But I guess one of the issues is that the town does not have the capability or the capacity or the time, energy, and expense to install that fence, and as a result, that the baseball parents are going to have to be installing a fence around those fields. Is that correct?
So there's a history there.
I'm sure there is, and that's why I'm asking.
So last February, I brokered a meeting with the staff of Public Works, myself, and the CYB/Reds. The Reds are the travel portion of the CYB. Yep. We outlined the plan of attack because prior to me coming, there wasn't a lot of Public Works work being done at the park because it was done through the Parks Division. And then you had this transition of the parks going to Public Works, and then 4 different Park and Rec directors in between 2017 and 2019. So during my field meetings, it was discovered that, McNamara needs some work. Public Works did a great job last summer at Cheshire Park, rehabbing, along with all the backstops and player bench fencing. Those are beautiful fields now. So we decided to turn our efforts towards McNamara. Last February, we had a whole plan of attack. There was going to be a public-private, public being Public Works and private being the Reds and CYB, work party on a couple of weekends and doing some things. But then COVID came, the season ended. We didn't have a baseball season. And then we deferred because of all the stuff going on. It just changed project timelines and coordination. So we moved it and we started talking about with Public Works to come back in the spring to do field work at McNamara. The league now did not have a registration. They didn't have funds to help pay for
Oh,
It's such a controversial topic that
yeah, you got cut off. I don't know, Elizabeth, do you know what he's going to finish saying?
Well, I can
Hard to
maybe
say
jump
with
in a little
John.
bit just in
All right,
case he
Sean.
comes back. I'll fill in maybe just a little more of the history too. And again, a lot of this is new. In some ways, the entire history of McNamara obviously predates me and John and even Public Works' involvement. I think it's really important to remember because a lot of the times in some of these conversations, Public Works sort of gets painted as maybe not having done a lot historically. I think it's important to remember they've only been in charge of the parks for the last 3 years. And John and George and I have been really, meeting very collaboratively and really trying to push to enhance our park operations going forward. I know, we've talked about the additional maintainer and the justifications for that, but I think it's important to note that for whatever reason, McNamara has had decades of really volunteer maintenance as kind of its core bedrock. The coaches would do lines and spread dirt and reset the bases. And the town historically really just mowed and emptied the trash regularly. So we, as volunteerism has changed, certainly, and I think different expectations, especially of newer residents, newcomers to Cheshire, have kind of gone into the CYB and RED system. And frankly, my own personal perspective, I think it should be supported. And I know the council agrees with the same level of support that other town parks get. It's a town park. It's owned by the town of Cheshire, and we ought to be pushing for that. So that's something, again, it's not a change that can happen 0 to 60 overnight. I think they've always taken down and installed that temporary fence every year prior to this year. And in fact, the town for the first time paid for that fence this year. That's always been their property. We authorized paying for that. My understanding actually is that they're getting together and doing that on Saturday. But again, I think some of this is expectation setting and understanding that you can't change 3 decades of one model in 1 year, especially 1 year of COVID, to be honest. But really over 2 years, we've made huge strides. If you go to McNamara now, and I really encourage people to see what has been done by Championship Turf at Field 4 and 1. I mean, it looks like a AA baseball quality field in terms of the cuts, the lines, the new mound. There's a brand new basketball court. There's new bathrooms that the council has support, all of those that the council has made happen. I think some of this, honestly, is people excited about all of this new attention McNamara's never gotten. But I also really want to say that Public Works has been great. And I think sometimes they're getting a little bit of the short end of the appreciation here. They've gone above and beyond with the resources they have really to take on this almost new asset. I think, as George said the other night, they've never had to maintain McNamara to this degree before. And we're excited about doing that going forward. But yes, I think this fence question is kind of one of those things that's kind of caught up in that history. And as we've pushed forward, and again, with the council's support, changing the maintenance philosophy of McNamara, but unfortunately, some of those things just don't happen overnight compared to 3 decades of one model. So,
right, and the email that I got, I was looped in on, said that yes, there are this person, so a few of the coaches and team parents are going to be getting together and installing the fence, and basically said while they're happy that the town has laid out, I think, about $3,500 for the fence this time around, as opposed to apparently back in 2012, somebody else, they had to pay for it, at least the town. He said that the town can't commit to installing it. And that's, I think, what they're kind of like, thanks for buying the fence, but isn't this a town park? And shouldn't the town be installing this instead of the parents and the coaches? And that's obviously what you're getting at, which is that this is, it's a work in progress and it's a process and it's moving that over. So, but yeah, so maybe it's a management of expectations, but I just wanted to bring it up just to find out a little bit more about it, where we were with that, because as I said, as you went, there is a history to this that I think most of us are not aware of. And also there's also some, wording in this email that, hey, if you were getting this email, you should be reaching out to the town manager and your town council members about this. So,
sure. And I think it's, and we've definitely talked to some folks about it. And again, I can't speak for exactly what.
So,
but I can tell you, I think the fence arrived yesterday. And I think the question was whether it could get up by Saturday. So I think there's a team getting together to put it up on Saturday. But one of the issues really is just timing in terms of, and John, feel free to.
So I'm sorry about that. We lost the connection here. So up until this year, CYB and their volunteers have always put up the fence and taken the fence down. So I don't know.
Yeah, this sounds more. Is this a permanent fence though? This sounds like it's more like a permanent installed fence that's going in around Mac 4.
It's a temporary vinyl fence. I was looking to install a permanent fence, but my rec commission told me that I couldn't pursue it because of some long agreement back in the day that field 4, field 1, 2, 3, the back corner, the back southeast corner, that field had to stay open in the off season of the baseball season. So it's kind of the same vinyl fence that they use at Bartlam Park and the softball fields 1 and 2 there. So this year, Public Works replaced those 2 because they were in ill repair, and we offered to, because we couldn't do the permanent one at McNamara, Public Works, with the funding that you guys supported us with the capital improvement dollars a couple of years ago, we're purchasing that out of that money. So To go back before I got cut off, we had this meeting, and that meeting would have been a springboard to better relations for this year as well. And, COVID just impacted a lot of things. The bottom line is there's a lot of good things happening there. If you've gone by McNamara, Field 4 is a championship field. Field 2, and we're following the priority that the Reds had set out, and then the next field will be Field 1. There really hasn't been that much of an inconvenience. I take a little issue with that, but they're going to be in a much better place these next couple of weeks. All 4 of those fields paid for by the town.
Got it.
So we're going to work on a program postseason, look to do some things in the fall to jump ahead of next spring, so that next spring it will just be little minor touches to all the fields and parks. But that's really working and coordinating with George and his guys, and those guys have really, they're doing their best of what they got right now.
All right. Well, it kind of sounds like we got the fence for them. Unfortunately, they need the fence up before town staff can really put that fence together. And so they're going to take that on and get that done with. So thank you very much for that information. And so I also just wanted to bring up in case other council members get communicated on that.
Just so you know, too, the CYS, which is the softball version of CYB, and the Flames, which is the girls' fast pitch to the boys' Reds, every year at Bartlett, those dads and moms put up the field. For the last 15, 20 years, they've been putting up the field fence to Bartlett 2 and Bartlett 3. So,
all right,
there's a little
excellent
give and take.
Yep. Well, thank you very much. I'm
Sure.
sorry, I didn't think that was going to take quite so long, but I
sorry for my
appreciate all the
connection.
information.
Thank you, Councilman Gallagher, and thank you. Now, since you veered out of your district, we're going to give Councilman Jenks, whose district it was. He had his hand up for some questions, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Burley. I wasn't aware of everything that was happening over at McNamara Park. I bike by there often, and from that vantage point, you can't tell, although there is the new courts, obviously, and the new playground. But it's great to hear all the stuff that's happening in the ball fields, too. So to Mr. Golick and Elizabeth, thank you so much for everything you guys have been doing. I want to just to reiterate a little bit of what everyone else has kind of said already, as far as everything you guys are doing. There's so many programs and so many good things that you guys have been working on, especially over the past year. I do think it's been a great service to the community. So thank you so much for all that. I want to make a couple of comments. I mean, I think. Recreation obviously is really important. I think it's an important thing for the community to have, but also as sort of a marketing tool to attract people here. We have the pool, we have the trail. It's great to see. We're doing things like the pickleball courts and things that we're potentially looking at with the Bartlett Park South. I loved hearing I know the disc golf thing has been something that you've been talking about for a while. I love to looking forward to seeing those plans. I love how we're just as a department, you're really kind of looking at all these things. And I know this isn't entirely your department, but I hope we can talk a bit about some mountain biking up at Dime Savings at some point too. I do think that all these things come together and make Cheshire a place that people will want to live even more than they do now. Because of all these recreation opportunities, and also as a destination for people to come into town and do things as well, and visit our businesses and so on and so forth. So it all works together really well, and it's very exciting to hear about all these things that we have going on. One question I have about the fields, the school fields, Norton and Highland and Doolittle, they all have pretty large fields adjacent to the buildings. I just want to get a sense of even with those facilities, we don't. Are you saying we don't have room for lacrosse and some other sports, even with all those large fields at our disposal?
We do, but with scheduling makes it difficult. Like Doolittle is a nice flat piece, but we have men's softball there. We have CYB there, so that the scheduling makes it tough there. We are using Highland for rugby and some overflow from adult men's softball. I've never really been down to Norton to take a look at that particular field. I know from the user groups, it's less than desirable from what they've told me, but maybe that's something that I need to take a look at. But there's some just minor turf improvements, some backstops, some player benches, and some screening. You're not talking about a whole lot of capital funds to help that. You already have parking lots there. We're servicing those areas with portalets. I know that through my meetings and discussions the last couple of years, you have residents that would be more than happy to use those areas and not be funneled at Cheshire Park and funneled at, Bartland Park, where there's all kinds of action. So certainly, when fields are out of commission or we have some issues like we ran into last year, it does leave us to scramble. And it's nice to be able to go to a school field that's desirable and that you can have a contest better than just, having just a practice field. And I do feel bad for the rugby group because the rugby group really doesn't really have a place. They're like traveling nomads. I mean, you couldn't believe how ecstatic they are to be at upper Mixville, and there's really nothing up there but an open field. They're used to practicing in a parking lot. So, so the flag portion is being held at Highland School, and the high school tackle portion is up at Mixville. So there's a lot of activity. It's all positive, but we're just a little short on some areas. So
right. Okay. I know I used to coach softball, my kids' softball team. I would schedule practice at Norton sometimes because it is one of those fields that was always available, but it is in tough shape for sure. I think for softball, baseball, it's okay. I'm not sure for what else it would need some work. You're right. But I just was, there are some large fields there, but it sounds like we just have a lot of use too.
Yep.
The another question I have too is going back to as we get back to basketball and rec basketball and travel basketball in our gyms. One of the I think we've some of us have had conversations with the travel basketball team and stuff about their challenges with scheduling and challenges of gym availability and stuff. I think one of the issues, and this is going back a while, so I may be mistaken at this point, but one of the issues I think was that we give men's over 30 basketball, I think 3 nights a week at Dodd. Was that right? And if that's the case, perhaps we can trim that a little bit and give a bit more time to our travel teams there.
So it's a discussion that Elizabeth and I have already had, upon my arrival in May of 2019, getting into that season, that travel season of 1920. We were talking about, that there is a lot. We have adult soccer at Dodd. We have adult men's open gym. I've had conversations with Sean about this, because I don't want to take outlets away from adults either. But kids shouldn't be practicing at 7, 8 o'clock. They have homework, all that stuff. Adults can be more portable. So I agree with that. There probably should be, and that's certainly something that we've discussed as a team at Park and Rec, and something that Elizabeth, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, but something that we're considering when we get to that season again.
This may be a slightly unpopular opinion, but there is not a lot of adult programming that we do have, and that is a revenue generator for us. It's not just a cost recovery. We do bring in some money for those programs, so there would be a reduction in our revenue there. There are other programs that are also in the schools that don't even go through our department. There are some nights that we aren't overseeing what's going on in the gyms at all. So there are some other teacher basketball that I believe the teachers go straight to the school. Again, I don't want to take a recreation opportunity away from anyone. We were talking at instead of reducing the amount of time that the men's league met, perhaps, instead of taking away a night entirely. So cutting the number of hours. And then there's also a men's basketball league that meets at the high school that we oversee. And we were talking about perhaps making a change there, and that might open up some time for travel basketball. The hard thing with that is the men's basketball league is at the mercy of the high school basketball schedule because they obviously take precedence. So there are a lot of times when it's a last minute cancellation. So they're kind of scraping. I mean, it's a great gym to be in, but they might find out an hour beforehand that their night is now canceled because something's come up at the high school. So we just want to find a good balance so that everybody's got an opportunity to have some opportunity for exercise.
Right.
It's
Yeah. And
definitely-
obviously, there's a lot of demand, as we've been hearing. There's a lot of demand for all the space. More demand. Sounds like more demand than we have. So, sorry, John, I cut you off there.
Yeah, no, it's definitely at the top of our list, Jim, as a consideration, as you could attest to Elizabeth's testimony there. So something that
And
we're looking at.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then just one more detail thing that I'm not quite following the conversation that we had about the increase in the in 5104, the line 5104, the increase in program summer help. Is that simply because we're going to have more programming, or is that because of the minimum wage? I didn't quite follow what you guys were saying there.
That's a combination. Some of it is because of the increase in minimum wage. It's an increase over last year because we're going to have more programming. But also, we are looking at having 2 Mixville Rangers at the park, when in prior years it was only 1 ranger, which is really a fairly unsafe situation. So having 2 staff members out there, I think, was really a benefit to Mixville last year. So that's a huge chunk of that as well.
Okay. All right.
Jim, if I could just add, it's important to remember, go back to last April, May, when we were adopting the budget. We made certain assumptions. If you recall, I had departments at least estimate or assume that things would remain closed for the first 3 months of the fiscal year. You wouldn't be doing any operations. We did modify some of those assumptions when we went to adopt, but there was, last May, it was very hard to predict what not only that fall was going to look like, but what next spring, the spring we're in right now, is going to look like. So yes, you are seeing some increases there that are just a expectation that we're going to have a more normal, if you will, year, July 1 to next June 30. But combined with minimum wage and the other changes we talked about.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. And great job again.
Thank you.
Councilman Jenks, are there other questions or comments from council members regarding general recreational questions of their budget? All right, then yes, Mr. Orris.
Thank you. Sorry to take a little more time, but this conversation provoked a question that I had relative to the park rangers. How are you going to select who those park rangers are? I know last year, because we did have some difficulties, some safety issues, and we increased the role of the park rangers. I'm a little concerned because I know we're talking about potentially hiring, part-time youth. And what I don't want to do is put our youth in a position where they could be, in a situation which could be difficult. And I just want to make sure, how are we managing the policing of that facility through these park rangers, and what kind of support or collaboration you're having with Cheshire PD?
Last year, they were youth. They were high school and college students, and they did a phenomenal job. They did a great job with customer service, and they made people happy. So I think that was a great testament. I think a lot of them are interested in returning this summer, so we always like to have our seasoned staff who did a great job return in future years. I have applications right now from most of them who are interested in coming back, so I would like to entertain that. And they have the Cheshire Police Department phone number right there for a call as needed. And as we get closer to the season, we'll definitely be in touch with Chief Drife to make sure that he's available, not him, but that the staff is aware that Mixville's out there and available to help if needed.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And I have no concern that our youth did a great job. My concern is not putting them in harm's way. I know there were a few incidents that were, and again, I think we fixed it, but, I just don't want to put our youth in an unsafe situation where they feel like they have to address someone and it could turn into something that we don't want it to. So I just want to make sure we're giving some thought as to how we're policing that facility, what the protocols are for engagement, so to speak, with people, and that if there is something that they really shouldn't be engaging too deeply, and we should be relying on our public safety professionals, because I just don't want any of our youth put in harm's way. That's all.
Absolutely. Yeah, we provide good training in advance so that they know what they can and can't do and should and shouldn't do to keep themselves safe and everybody at the park safe. So that's all part of our training as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sensing that you're ready to move on, we will go to the pool enterprise fund. Not sure you still call them that, but separate fund. Mr. Kimball, do you want to start us?
Sure, I will. I'll probably turn it over to Sheila here quickly, unless
Okay.
John, you were going to do an introduction, but I will point out the community pool starts on page 179 of the detail book. And with that, I don't know, John, or do you want to turn it right to Sheila for some
Turn it right to Sheila.
Okay.
Welcome.
Hello,
Welcome.
welcome to me, yes. All right, so I'm just gonna kind of go through the line items and give you an idea of where we're at right now, where I think we are gonna be at the end of the year, and then what my projections are for next year. For the salary lines, my permanent full-time is actually gonna be a little bit lower than what we estimated it for due to a couple of reasons. One is we hired a new facility tech, so he was at a lower pay rate than the one who retired. And also the head desk attendant was new coming in, so obviously making less. I also just, my head guard just resigned. He moved to Florida, actually. So we will save some more there as well. For next year, the increases are all raises, basically. You know, nothing's changing there in any way. My temporary part-time, that is the biggest increase in my budget, and it's the same as it is for Elizabeth and her staff. It's minimum wage going up. What we had appropriated for this year was 182,313. We were able to drop that down because I did cut some hours out at the front desk. I have my morning staff rotating out to the desk instead of having a part-time person out there. I also have cut back people because as of November 23rd, we were no longer allowed to have open swim going on. So I was able to cut guard hours there. It's just a guard and a supervisor here instead of having an additional guard. However, we just instituted an additional guard again because we have increased swim lessons, which is a good thing. So we're increasing revenue, but that temporary part-time line might not be at the 171 that I estimated that we will be at for a couple of reasons. One, I did increase, I now have 2 guards in the evening plus a supervisor because the supervisor is actually teaching swim lessons. So I need 2 guards here so that they can rotate. And also due to losing the head guard, my temporary part-time people will take on the duties of that position until I have hired the permanent person for that position. So that 171 may change a little bit. I don't think it's going to be drastic, but we are going up, as you can see, a significant amount for next year. But minimum wage is going from $12 an hour to $13 an hour. And one thing with the lifeguards, we have always paid our lifeguards over minimum wage. And the reason for that is they do a lot. There's a lot of expectations on them. They're responsible for people's lives on a daily basis. They have to get certified to even work here. They have to do monthly in-services. There's just a lot to the job as opposed to sitting out at the front desk making $12 an hour. So we have always paid $2 more an hour to our staff that were lifeguards. We are now paying them the exact same amount that somebody who is sitting out at the front desk is making. I don't know if you guys are aware, but my staff got a petition going stating that they felt that they deserved more than the $12 an hour. So what I've done and we also, let me backtrack a little bit. The Connecticut Recreations and Parks Association did a survey of what towns in Connecticut pay their guards. We always used to be one of the higher towns paying. We are now the lowest. We pay guards the least out of any other town around us. The issue that I have with that is a lot of my staff are going to look elsewhere where they can make $2 more an hour than they're making here. And to be perfectly honest with you, I have phenomenal staff right now that I don't want to lose them. So I have put in that for next year, as of July 1, they are going to go up to $13.50 an hour. They're going to be 50 cents more the minimum wage, which will take effect August 1st. So that's the increase there. We've also gone back to I did the budget as though we're going to be operating hopefully as close to normal as we can. I'm going to be able to have open swim in here, so I'm going to need the staff in here to be able to make sure that everybody's safe when they're in the facility. And I also added back in the morning desk hours so that the guard and the supervisor don't have to flip flop out there because it's a little difficult to do. So that's where we are with that. Overtime is overtime. That's for the facility technician for snow. And, you know, we put in $4,500. We never know what we're going to spend. It really depends on how many storms we have in the year. There are savings in a lot of the lines down below. Office supplies, obviously, we haven't used as much there. Building maintenance, we are hopefully going to be under in that than what we had asked for due to the fact that we don't have as many people in the facility. So we're not going through all the materials, you know, paper towels, toilet paper, soap, all that kind of stuff. At least we were up until we started doing the vaccine clinics here. And now we have a very large increase in the number of people that are in here 3 times a week. So that might go up a little bit from where we thought. Program materials, we're going to be way down on that because we are not running the programs that we normally do. We have been running some, as I said, you know, tonight I just got out of swim lessons. I've been teaching swim lessons pretty much since we opened in June. I've been the only one teaching swim lessons just due to COVID and, you know, being able to social distance and all that stuff. We just started this session, which started on Monday. I added 2 more instructors, not sure what was going to happen with it because, and we are only doing private lessons. We're not doing group lessons. We have 70 kids that enrolled in swim lessons, you know, and I could have gotten 140 kids enrolled in swim lessons if I could offer the space and everything for people to be able to be in here doing lessons. So that hopefully is going to be a big increase for us for our revenue. Advertising, I've had to advertise for 1 job. That's about it. Printing, that does not come out of my budget anymore. That's now in the Park and Rec budget. Everything else is pretty much what it always has been. Nothing really has increased. Electrical is going to be where we thought it was going to be, heating, all that stuff. I mean, we're still, with the facility still open, we're still heating the pool, we're still heating the building, we're still putting chlorine in the pool and doing all of that stuff. So a lot of the stuff is not going to change much. And trust me, I'm doing everything that I can to not spend money when I don't have to. But we have things happen, like John said in his presentation, we had the impeller go on the main pool filter motor, and the motor was so antiquated that we had to get a whole new motor. We couldn't just replace the impeller, which we have done in the past. And since this pool has been open, this is the 4th time that we've had to replace the impeller, which is very common. The impeller goes it lasts about every 5 years. And unfortunately, the motor that the impeller went into is no longer made. And we could not get a motor to meet the flow rate that we need and all the stuff that we need for state health codes without replacing the entire thing. So that was an expenditure that we had not anticipated. And as John said, the UV light, we lost that in one of the storms, but we recouped most of that through insurance. Revenue is not great. We're right now at about $230,000 that we've brought in since the beginning of the fiscal year. And that's usually what I bring in the months of June and July. We lost swim team revenue from November 23rd until January 19th. That's a big hit for us. That was about $10,000 a month. So it's about $20,000 we lost there. We don't have the swim meets going on. As I said, we don't have group lessons. Generally, we would bring in during a swim lesson session, the one that we are in right now, we could bring in $40,000. We brought in 10 with what we're doing. So everything, COVID has just really made it so that we can't do what we normally do. We don't have the programs that are running, swim meets cannot run, all of that stuff. And that's pretty much where we are at right now.
Sorry, do we have a revenue, Sean, that you can put up like you did with the Park and Rec?
Jim, do you have, I know Jim was looking at that earlier today. I don't know, Jim, do you have something you can share or speak to at least, and I can pull up that old one if you want.
Visuals are helpful
Visuals are
along with
helpful,
the
I know.
narrative.
Sean, I'm thinking in the, in the budget book we have on page 126, that might be worth putting up if you can get it.
Yep, I can. I just got to go pull it back up 1 second. You said 126?
Yeah. And also on the G drive, I have a pool fee summary spreadsheet that shows revenues historically, which.
Which one would you, Chairman Barrow, which one of those two would you like to see?
Well, page 126 had that, but
I can,
the other
I'll
one.
go to 126 first, and then
Yeah.
I can go
Yeah.
into the G drive, Jim, after that. If you,
Yep.
My,
That's the one I have. That's this way.
yeah, I do as well, and my cursor is spinning. Here we go. Okay. Oh my goodness. Oh, I guess I had it open twice. That'll do it. Here we go. All right, 126. All right, give me 1 second. There we go.
Oh. Which book are we in here, guys?
In the big book.
Oh, the big book. Okay.
There we go.
Trying to get that on one page there. All right, there you go. You know what the title is.
So Sean, maybe I could just kind of just briefly go over this, but it kind of summarizes, I think, what we're projecting for this fiscal year versus what was budgeted. So for pool fee revenues, we had a appropriation of 537,000 for this year. We're projecting 270. Obviously, that will have a big impact on what the general fund needs to cover this operation. So we had appropriated a pool fee subsidy of 396,411. I'm projecting, based on what we're projecting for this year, and I do think we'll hit that 270 in revenue. I'm actually pretty optimistic at this point that we will exceed that, but I think we're going to need to increase our pool fund subsidy sometime before the end of the year to over $600,000. So it's a big increase. And that's this fiscal year. Next year, I think, we were projecting revenues to be more in line with revenue. I think we'll see that in a minute. We peaked out at over 600,000 in revenues. I didn't think we wanted to go there. We went and projected revenue for fiscal 22 more in line with what we budgeted for fiscal 21, hoping that we can at least get back, to that level.
I think Jim is more in line with what we collected in 20, I think was what we.
20, right, exactly.
Yeah, right here. Knowing that it was shortened by COVID, so.
Right. Down below on that page too, you can see the pool fund balance, which is, projected out based on what we're looking at here. So we don't have a lot of reserve fund balance to fall back on in this fund. Again, I'm hoping that the projections for this year are a little bit conservative and we'll actually end up doing a little bit better than that.
I don't know if you want me to
All
keep
right.
that up.
No, I did. Well, I don't know. Does anybody else need to keep that up?
I mean, on a positive note, I just want to add that the Y is trying to run some meets here. They're putting together stuff for me to do one in May and June. And if they are able to do it the way that they would like, it's going to be help quite a bit with the revenue. And I see a light at the end of the tunnel, hopefully.
So this is not an expectation that, like some people not returning to work, they're going from home. This is something that we do expect to get back to a normal level because it is an activity that, well, it's indoors, it's outdoors.
Right. I mean, if I were able right now to have families in here, families would be in here and this revenue would be so much bigger than it is. It's
And-
really, my hands are tied with what I can do. Once I get to go ahead to get families in here and to be able to let them do swim meets and everything else, yes, we're going to be able to get back. But I mean, I don't know if you guys remember the 2 times that the bubble collapsed, it took a while to rebuild all of that.
Mhm.
And that's why I looked at the revenue as being, we're not going to be at $600,000. Maybe we will, maybe, but my expectation is it's going to take us a while to build that back up again.
All right.
And I think definitely the competitive groups, they've been clamoring to get back in. Sheila and I have been talking a lot about, as everyone knows, we've been using a portion of the pool for the vaccine clinic since January 2nd. I've been talking to Maura as recently as today about plans, as Sheila and I were optimistic that maybe by April 20th, although now that's not going to come to pass, that open swim might be allowed by the state. As we're looking into May, we're making plans to move the vaccine clinic over probably to a high school gym in the event we need that space back to accommodate additional pool activities. So we're kind of all just watching this very closely to see if we can expand access in the coming weeks.
And hopefully by July 1, which is what the effective date of what we're talking about is, the next fiscal year's budget.
That's the plan, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. Are there questions or comments regarding this, Mr. Orris?
Thank you, Mr. Barry. Thank you so much, Sheila. Obviously, this year's revenue is very anticipated and understood. And I'm glad, Mr. Kimball, you raised the issue of the fact that we as a community are using the pool to serve a greater good. So while we're going to be funding at a greater extent, I think we would all agree we do it all over again because of the community service that it's providing during this terrible pandemic. And it's been used really around the clock to serve this community and to serve other communities. So the selfless acts of that facility and the people running it and the volunteers that have been in there, I'm really proud of the town of Cheshire as to how we've conducted the use of that facility for not only our residents, but for the Chespercott group, which is Prospect and Wolcott. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Sean, because I think our community needs to understand that. The other thing I would say, Sheila, is that, as we go forward, we were working really hard to think out of the box about how we can continue to close this gap in terms of funding issues. And I think you had a lot of great ideas. We were making progress, and unfortunately, we got hit with the pandemic. So I'm confident you and John and all of the Park and Rec staff are going to continue those efforts going forward. Hopefully we can work on closing that gap as things more normalize again. I, for one, see the pool as a big asset to this community. Clearly, from a budgetary perspective, we need to lower the amount of dollars that we're funding taxpayer money into it. But this year is just the anomaly that it is, and we just have to live with it. So thank you for all you're doing. And Sheila, I know you were a big part of supporting the efforts in that facility as well, relative to, we were testing first there, then we were doing vaccinations. We're still doing those vaccinations. You played a big part in that as well. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
All right. I actually have a question, and then I see Mr. Walsh's hand. There appears to be a decent percentage increase in building materials line and the building property lines. Is that, does that mean that you're confident now that we have a handle on the assessment of the situation with the HVAC equipment and other equipment, its condition, and when things might be expected to need to be replaced?
I mean, I think that, I hate to say this, I hate to jinx anything, but we have replaced, in my mind, anything that could go wrong at this point in time, but you never know what's going to happen.
Sheila, don't say that, Sheila.
I know. And this, I've been here for 20 years. Every year something happens. It is what it is. It's a pool. I'm hoping like heck that we are on the other side of the hill.
But I understood there was you had somebody in to assess the situation of the equipment.
Yes, Weston and Sampson came in and they did an assessment. They did. And they gave us a pretty good idea of when we would have to look at things. Like the next big expenditure that I see that we would possibly have is the pool deck. The pool deck, the expansion joints, all that stuff, it's going to need to be addressed within the next few years, without a doubt. But yes, they were a big help with letting us see what we need to look at and where we need to go.
All right. And some of
John,
that, I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that document, I know we got the final, it was in two parts, the overall facility and then the special, we asked for additional HVAC analysis. John, I know that those documents are final now and we can share those with the council. I think they're good reads to kind
Absolutely.
of get a picture for what's going to come our way in the next couple of, well, really next 10 to 15 years. So
Right.
we'll
Absolutely.
certainly share those.
All right.
And it's a plan because, I mean, the pump was, slated to last a couple more years. But because of the impeller and the age of the pump, and we couldn't manufacture an impeller for the pump, that's why we had to change the pump out. So
And perhaps we caught a break a little bit when the storm Isaias came through and the power outage, a power surge, put the UV light, if I have that right, out of commission.
Correct.
That was actually, what was 40 or 50,000, but insurance covered the entire thing. It was on Weston and Sampson's report to be replaced, John, in the next couple of years. So
correct. So now we just picked up
the
15
lightning
years.
helped out a little bit, or whatever
Right.
it was. So the power surge. helped
Right.
a little.
Right.
Okay. That's good. Let's not hope for another power surge though. Other questions or comments regarding Mr. Walsh? I'm sorry. Thank you. I had called on you.
Thank you, Mr. Barry. Yeah, I was actually going to ask the same question about, I remember last year when we found out about the liner, I said, that's something that, if it's a 10-year liner, we should be building that into a capital budget. And I don't know how expensive some of these other repairs may be down the line in 10 or 15 years, but I mean, I think that's something that would be helpful to us and the council to know what is coming down the line. Because, if there's a $100,000 repair or $75,000 repair, that's something we really should know that it's a potential thing that's going to happen in the next couple of years. So I appreciate seeing those numbers. And I think it's something that probably should be done periodically by this group so that there's so many moving parts at the pool that you have to make sure you stay on top of everything. The other thing is, Sheila, with the increased salaries that you have there, is that bringing you up to full staff now, or
That would be bringing us up to full staff, correct? The changes for next year, yes.
Okay, so you're going to be up to full staff, but we're not sure, even if they do allow families to come back. I mean, I'm sure, like you said, with the bubble, it's going to be a slow go because there are going to be families who aren't going to want to be coming in there. And I'm just wondering, we're going to be at full staff, but we may only be having half the revenue coming in.
So I'm pretty good about if I kind of read it and what I know that we can bring in. First, I'll look at what can we bring in? What are the guidelines going to be for me? All right, if the guidelines are that it's the same as last year, we didn't have a full staff last year because we didn't need a full staff. If we are told, go ahead, you can open 100%, and we know that that's not going to happen this summer, at least I don't think that it will. I will kind of look at it and say, okay, who's coming in the first couple of days? It might be, all right, here we go. We got a full staff in here. I'll cut people back if we don't need people here. I'm on my supervisors all the time. You don't need them, send them home. Because
I know you were using some of the lifeguards and stuff to do some painting and things like that needed to be done anyway. So I mean, it was using minimum wage or a little over minimum wage to do some things that probably would have cost us more money. So that was good use of that. But I just get concerned about how it's going to be probably another year before you start seeing more full use of the pool from people. I wish it could come quicker, but I just think that there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be a little more hesitant. Plus, with the schools and the teams and everything else, you're up in the air. I'm hoping that you're right with the Y, and they do come in and they can bring in some revenue that way. But I want to just echo Mr. Orris's comments about I appreciate you being involved in organizing with Chespercott to do the testing and the vaccination. It's just so important for this community to make sure we had a place that was safe for people to go to, and it was run very well. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
Other council members? Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Other council members with questions or comments on the pool? All right, very good. Thank you, Sheila. Appreciate that.
Very welcome.
Sean, I think we're set with what we had for tonight. John, thank you very much. Elizabeth, thank you. Appreciate that. What I would like to recommend is next week is I'm sorry, Ms. Pavano, did you have your hand up? Did you have a comment? No, okay. What I would like to recommend is next week is our regular council meeting. So let's focus our energies on that because we do have some time. Hopefully next week there'll be a motion that gets approved, giving us an extended time. I'd like to see if sometime the following week we could get an update because Mr. Kimball, I'm gathering that is enough time for you and Mr. Jascott to get together on some of the updates for both expenditure side, which will have expenditures through March, and which is probably a couple of months from update, and 3 months from the Board of Ed, and then also get some of the revenue updates. And we've talked about some of the revenues that maybe can be pushed a little bit with departments as we've gone through the departments. So maybe we can schedule a meeting to get together the week of the 18th, and later that week, probably maybe that Thursday, whatever that Thursday is, the 22nd or something, the 22nd, maybe, if that's all right with everybody. That should be able to give some time, hopefully, to get some updated numbers, and then we can begin our deliberations on what we think expenditures might be that we need to look at more carefully and make adjustments to, get some updates, revenues, and maybe at that time we can also hear an update on the latest from the state legislature with regard to the budget and numbers, because I think the committees need to report out around that time. The committees of relevance anyway. And then we can start hearing whatever the update is regarding some of that COVID money that's coming through with the $1.9 trillion from the federal government that definitely has some pass-throughs to us. Mr. Orris, did you have your hand up as well?
No, I did not, Mr.
I'm
Barber.
sorry, I
Thank you.
didn't want to not call on somebody. So if that's our game plan, if everybody is fine with that, of course, as I said, we've got our council meeting next Tuesday. Then the following Thursday, the 22nd, we could get together as a budget committee and with special council meeting as well and get some of these updates. That timetable is good for everybody. I'm seeing a lot of up and down, yes, and that's good. All right, super. With that, Mr. Orris, hand the special council meeting back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. We appreciate all your efforts tonight. And John, Elizabeth, and Sheila, thank you so much for your time tonight. Good night to all three of you, and also to the public, whoever participated tonight. Thank you for doing so. And with that, I will call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you.
Looks like Mr. Walsh, and second, Mr. Jinks. Well, I guess I ought to call for a second. Is there a second? Mr. Jinks, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you all. Appreciate everyone's effort. Good night.